All right, we are going live right now.
Awesome.
Du-du-du-du. Well, there. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Virtual Thursdays, Dire Literary Series. And today I've got a renowned author and altogether good person, Emily Schultz. And let me let me do her Let me do her computer bio. There she is. She is the author of Sleeping with Friends and the forthcoming Brooklyn and the recently released Brooklyn Kills Me, both from Thomas and Mercer. She's the former publisher of Joyland Magazine. Her last novel, Little Threats, was published by G.P. Putnam Sons and was named an Apple Best Books Pick of 2020. Her novel, The Blondes, released in the U.S. with St. Martin's Press and Picador in France, etc., was named Best Book in 2015 by NPR and Kirkus. And if you want more, that's the brief one. EmilySchultz.com will show you everything. And you can also find, if you notice here, the high resolution photo downloads. So those are cool. And so without anything further on, I'm going to turn it over to Emily, and Emily's going to read us a little something.
Yes, I am. Well, first of all, though, is it Tim or Timothy? Which do you prefer?
Either.
Either. Well, here's the thing, Timothy, is I'm going to read from Sleeping with Friends, which, as you know, looks like this. And I published this in January of 2024, but I didn't really get to read from it very much. And that's why it means a lot to me to just suddenly out of the blue be invited to your series. So I want to thank you for that. What happened was my mother was going through her final months of cancer, and I wound up having to cancel some of my readings to be with her. And so it just means a lot to me to be able to read from it and also to see all these faces on the Zoom. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm just going to read. So I like to start at the beginning. Prologue, save the date. At first, Mia thought the blood in her eyes was an Instagram filter. Above her, the trees had gone red, the morning fog auburn. But then Mia couldn't tell if she was dreaming or watching a film where a woman alone winds her way slowly down a country lane. Bloomhouse or art house? Was she a strong female character? No matter, the scene needed more light. Too flat. Whoever was making this film should have waited for magic hour. Mia squinted, placed bare feet against stone, left, right, as if every step mattered, looking down, seeing her movements more than feeling them. Her ears rang and her head felt thick, as though she were carrying a sandbag across her shoulders. Yet as she advanced toward the road, it occurred to her she wasn't carrying anything but the weight of pain. When she blinked hard, her ears would pop and she could hear the sound of morning, birds twittering overhead, for a few seconds before the ringing again blotted out everything real. She knew the moment the stone driveway turned to gravel. It meant she had gone through the gate, reached the road. Whose gate? Which road? She didn't know, but something inside said, a little farther. She could see squares of light ahead peeking through branches, another house. How far? Half a mile? More? She didn't know. She didn't look back, but she thought, whoever did this, they'll come for me again. It became a song in her mind and drove each step. Whoever did this, they'll come for me again. She gripped her white robe tighter around her, closing it with one hand at her throat. There was burgundy all down one sleeve, like a tumble of cherry blossoms, but it wasn't a pattern, just more blood. The pitted road cut into her bare feet, so she loped toward a ditch and cold, dewy grass. Then a slight embankment. She felt the smooth cement of another driveway, and she sank to her knees, grateful. Her feet and legs were numb. This was safety, as close as she could get. Her hands wrapped around the bars of the neighbor's gate. She shook it as hard as she could, screaming. And I'll go into chapter 1. Prep time. Mia was everyone's wife. When you were with Mia, she was more than present. She was yours, there for you in a way that no one else was. She looked into your eyes the whole time you were talking. She heard you and knew just what you needed, even when you didn't. In Agnes's opinion, Mia Sinclair was the most sincere and generous person she'd ever met. So smart, so beautiful, with a sense of humor that could wilt anyone who underestimated her. It was that bond that only happens when you're in your early 20s, when you meet the friend and know This is the girl I would die for. This is the person I meant to know forever. That's why it was a shock when Mia actually did get married, as if the vows of friendship meant nothing anymore. She'd abandoned not just Agnes, but everyone: Victor, Ethan, Zoe, the whole five-way marriage that had grown around Mia and her friend circle during college. That time counted now as years ago, but Agnes still instinctively grabbed her phone to call Mia whenever something big happened. Whether it was a disaster like her car stalling in the middle of the Williamsburg Bridge, or a thrill like seeing the French actress Marion Cotillard outside a McDonald's in the East Village. But the last time Agnes had phoned Mia, she'd had to leave a message. Mia couldn't have picked up because she'd already been taken to the hospital and put into a coma, her slightly open eyes fluttering inside a fractured skull no one could explain how she'd gotten. Now she was out of the hospital, and it was time to help her heal. Agnes drove fast, eager to get to Mia's house in Connecticut, with Zoe in the passenger seat. They zipped past red maples that were pink with buds and service berries, emerging into blossom. Beyond the highway, they shifted in the breeze like delicate white ghosts. Over the last few weeks, Agnes had dropped everything and acted as a conduit between the friends and Mia's family, forwarding updates from doctors, researching medical terms, stents, aphasia, visual memory loss. When it had first happened, Agnes emailed a pediatrician cousin and asked why they put Mia into an induced coma for a head injury. It's pressing pause on the patient's life, she'd written back, because they don't know what else to do. In some ways, Mia had already pressed pause by moving out here. Although she spent some time in Brooklyn, it seemed like more and more over the last year when Agnes would phone or text her, she'd be in the country. Agnes peered at the road signs and Zoe shifted uncomfortably in the passenger's seat. Agnes could tell that Zoe wished she were the one driving instead. I was invited up here a few more times, Zoe casually declared the old status wars of who had the most Mia time. Probably because Ethan and I are a couple. Couple or not, on the count of Mia time, Martin had clearly won over everyone else. After being weaned out of the 14-day coma and subsequent recovery time, Mia had been under her husband's constant supervision. When Agnes visited Mia in the hospital, she could tell that Mia hadn't remembered her. Whenever Agnes smiled at her, Mia's bloodshot eyes just glanced away. She hadn't been herself. A roughly shaved spot on the back of Mia's head showed the stitches that closed up the wound. They were caused, her husband Martin said, by the corner of their marble kitchen island at the country house. Agnes could see the nursing staff thinking, husband did it, as they rotely adjusted IV drips and charts. Martin had told her that he was at their brownstone in Brooklyn when it happened. No one would ever think that 2 weeks of sleep could erase so many wide-awake years. The number of concerts they'd been to together in the early days, the art and writing projects, the joints passed back and forth, blouses or jeans lent and never returned. Still, Agnes had a hard time believing it. The entire inventory erased? Then, as Agnes had been leaving the hospital that first day, Mia said a name, Thora, in such a thin, plaintive tone that Agnes set her purse down again. We were friends, weren't we? Like in Ghost World? Mia asked. Taking her hand, Agnes had told her yes. Yes! How in the hell does she remember Thora Birch, but not me? She wondered. Was the implication that Mia was Scarlett Johansson? It was Agnes who convinced Martin to let them hold a remembering party once Mia was allowed to go home. Let her be surrounded by faces she'd known for years. Agnes and Zoe would bring photos and videos, her favorite foods. Her sister, Stephanie, would come, fly in from Chicago. But Martin had seemed more drained than convinced. It's more a remembering game, isn't it? He asked, deciding what she remembers. People can change. What Agnes heard was a man worried that there was more of Mia's friends left inside her head than him.
Mind if I join you?
Thanks.
That was such a wonderful section. And first of all, I'm sorry about the loss of your mom. So I think it's really cool that you got to read from that book. So something like that, does it manage to seep into your writing at all, either fiction or nonfiction sense?
Oh, no, it definitely does. And I mean, there's a little bit actually of my mom in this book too. I wrote an essay when the book came out for Literary Hub. When I was 14, my mom actually had a coma. She had spinal meningitis and she was in a coma for 10 days. And so I started writing this book during the pandemic, and I really wanted to write like a party novel because none of us could go anywhere. And then somehow I got into it, and this coma thing was happening, and she didn't remember anything, and her memories were affected. And once I started, I was like, oh, this is based a lot on my mom.
Wow. And I also noticed too, especially in some of your books, especially what you read tonight, you have the narrator is very much an observer. And does living in Brooklyn and the New York metro area influence your writing and your narrative as such?
Um, well, I think anytime you live in a big city, you see a lot and you're always listening. At least I used to be. I think since living in Brooklyn, I'm more likely to put my headphones on when I'm on public transit, which means I don't, listen in on as many conversations as I used to. But I do still love going out in public, especially cafes, and just listening in on how people talk and what they say and trying to figure out what their situation is. And like with this cast of characters, so I mean, it's set among a group of friends who are now aging and they're like in their late 30s, mid to late 30s, but they were once really close, when they were in college, and now they're changing and they're going in different directions. And so, I mean, I was kind of trying to come up with people who would be kind of Brooklyn types, right? And I'm a little bit of all of them. I've been thinking, but certainly like there's some types in here, like they're artists, and um, Agnes works in publishing, which I work as an editor and also as a writer, clearly. But we all have our day jobs and our gigs. And then there's Ethan and Zoe, and they run like a YouTube channel where they do movie criticism. And I feel like I'm actually becoming, more like them, where before I related more to Agnes. So.
Are those characters based on people that you know? Not maybe not completely, but pieces. And also, when you're writing and these characters are living in your head, is it difficult to say goodbye to them?
Oh yeah, for sure. No, they're based on people I know. Like I dedicated this book to two of my best friends in Toronto, Betty and Dawn. And but I don't think that either one of them is specifically a character. I think there's just little trace elements. And this is what I'm saying is like the characters that are a couple, I'm like, well, they're a little bit Betty and Jake, my friends, but then they're also a little bit like myself and my partner. You know what I mean? So you do kind of like borrow a bit here and there. And in terms of saying goodbye to them, I actually extended a couple of the characters into a different book called Brooklyn Kills Me, which came out in October 2024. We did the two books close back to back. And that one's much more of a traditional mystery. Like this one's kind of weird, if I'm honest, because as it goes on, you find out that Mia's only going to remember films instead of her friends, like the way that she has that little bit about Ghost World. But that was really hard because I was trying to pick films that I thought most people would know. And people have such disparate tastes that I don't know if anyone's going to get all the films, but.
Well, I love the tabs on your webpage. You got a tab for your books, you have a tab for Little Threats, and you had a tab for the blondes, and you have a tab for friends and enemies, which includes Sleeping with Friends and Brooklyn Kills Me. So what's the enemy aspect of Brooklyn Kills Me?
So the enemy aspect in both of the books, because they're a series and they go together, is that eventually everyone at this party that starts it off will become a suspect. And the same thing happens in Brooklyn Kills Me. It starts at a party and then everyone's going to become a suspect. Like in this book, we'll find out that Mia's accident was maybe not an accident. And so they have to figure out, did someone try to hurt her? And in the other book, Brooklyn Kills Me, it starts with this, it's set in Williamsburg in a condo tower, which I mean, I do not live in a condo tower. So that was me writing a little bit outside of my experience. But a woman will die after a party and they'll have to try to investigate and find out who did it.
I was supposed to have asked this question. That's my second question, so I'm going to back up a little bit. Did your mom enjoy your work, and did she get a chance to read this particular book where the characters, and of course, obviously she was in a coma, did she get to check it out? And what did your mom say about your writing?
So we talked a little bit about her coma because I mean, it happened so long ago. I was just a teenager. So we talked about it while I was writing this book. I wrote this book really during the main part of the pandemic, and then of course rewrote it and rewrote it. And I wrote most of it in this apartment, in fact, because my neighbor was away for a large portion of the pandemic, and she generously let me write here. So my mom and I did talk about her coma. I also had another friend as an adult who wound up having a coma and then coming out of it, and he also had cancer. And he told me some things about it too. And what was interesting was that both of them had really vivid memories from their comas. So like my mother, when she came out of the coma, and I remember I didn't go see her. I was 14 and I just didn't want to see her, which now as an adult, I look back on that. I'm like, that's heartbreaking. Like if I were in a coma, I would want my son to come, even if I wasn't completely aware, just so that I would know he was there. And so now I feel really bad that I didn't go until she came out of the coma. But when she came out of the coma, she had this experience where she was introduced to a nurse. And she said to the nurse, and when they introduced her, "Oh, I know who you are. You're the one who got soap in my eyes." So
Thank you for your service, and don't do that again.
uh,
That's great. And second part of that question, did your mom read, does she read your books? Does she have any feedback? 'Cause I remember my mom used to say, like, Tim, you really need to have some hooks between your chapters, a little bit more hooks. I'm like, okay, mom. All right.
both my parents read my books, especially early on in my career. I grew up in Canada, and so my career started there, and then I moved to New York. And so my early books they read, and my father was a high school English teacher. And so if he saw a typo, he would always tell me, which is really, to me, it's like really funny. It's like, that's what you have to say. But I think they were proud. My mom had certain books that were her favorites. Like when I wrote Little Threats, which came out in the middle of the pandemic in 2020. I mean, I did actually weirdly do a lot of readings for that, but they were like this, they were all on Zoom. But that one I think was her favorite. This one, she read it and I think she didn't figure out who did it, if I remember correctly. But the thing that she had trouble with was the movie references because she's really not a film person. But yeah.
You had two books, Apple Best Book Pick for 2020 and NPR Best Book. Which one's better of those two?
Of which Little Threats and
Little Threats and the Blondes.
oh, okay. Well, that's okay.
If you were to vote the best book on the Emily Schultz list of best books by Emily Schultz, which one wins?
So here's the thing. I think that the better book is Little Threats. Um, I think that I was more developed as a writer and I had honed my skills with plot because I really started out um, more in poetry and more experimental type novels when I was younger. And The Blondes was really like my first popular book. But people love it. I don't get it. I like Little Threats because I feel like I had developed more. I mean, I do get it because it's an interesting concept, but I just when I look back, I'm like, oh, I could have done so many more things better, you know?
Do you still write poetry?
Um, I don't write as much poetry as I used to. I still have a lot of poems on my computer that will probably never see the light of day, but now when I write poetry, it's more for myself.
So winning those awards with your novels, tell me how it felt when you found out. That's your typical sports question. So Emily, tell me how it felt when you scored the winning touchdown. What was
Um,
going through your mind?
well, it's always a surprise and a gift when your book gets any kind of acknowledgement. I mean, honestly, especially with things like reviews and coverage really shrinking, when you get anything, it's just so exciting and such an honor, you know, and especially if you don't know it's coming. So like with the Apple Books one, I had no idea that that was going to happen. I basically woke up and I think I got a Google alert or I saw it in my feed or something. Like my editor or publicist, I don't think they knew it was coming either. It was just there. So that was wonderful. Um, what were the other ones?
I was thinking about my next question. I have no idea what my previous question is.
Okay.
So my next question, my next question, you had a podcast serialized from your book that you produced. What was that like doing?
That was a lot of fun. So my partner Brian and I we serialized The Blondes as a podcast. and recorded it ourselves. He's very good with audio and video also. Um, but it was just kind of, I mean, it was interesting because when you adapt your own work, you're looking for the things that will travel in a short amount of space, right? You don't have the luxury of spreading out like you do in a novel. And so you're having to kind of synopsize it and then look for the parts that are the funniest or look for the parts that are the scariest and try to bring those to the surface. And then doing like audio storytelling and getting different actors in to voice these parts was really, it was just really an interesting experience. And we actually wound up, so Maddie Zima voiced the part of Hazel. I mean, I should say for anyone who doesn't know, The Blondes is about a hair virus where women basically go crazy and become rabid and rage out, but only if they're blonde. Um, yeah. So Maddie Zima played the lead of Hazel Hayes, and she did an amazing job. And she actually, if you follow her on social media, she has like a new series that she's doing with her sisters. That's like, I think they've completely done it all themselves. And so I really love this because I love the idea. I come out of the DIY world and I love the idea of doing it yourself. You know what I mean? If you have the skills and the talent and you have talented friends, it's it's a lot of fun to do.
Now, when you do something like that, you have to revise and rewrite the episodes as if, like, from as if it's a new product, or do you use the book, discuss a little bit, and then jump around like you would maybe at a sequential reading, so to speak?
No, I would say it's a little different. It's more like it's an overhaul. um, it's an overhaul and kind of like what information does the audience need right away about the character and the situation and how to best convey that, right? So I'm trying to think where the podcast starts versus the novel, but basically we kept some things from the novel. So for instance, in the podcast version, there's a quarantine. And I mean, that wound up being true of pandemics, lots of quarantines. But so we spent a lot of time in the quarantine in the podcast, and we left off probably more of the ending and the drama part of the story and focused more on the virus, right? So some of the character dynamics are there, but not all of them.
So I know that writers love the feeling of being finished, like finished with the draft, and then like you bring it to an editor and there's some revisions, and you're like, oh no, I thought it was clean and finished, and then he goes to a publisher and there's more revisions. You're like, oh no, it's not finished. It sounds like doing a podcast and doing like an overhaul. Um, Suddenly you're not finished. You're just starting. Did you ever regret or wonder, why am I doing this? Or was it totally fun?
With the podcast?
Yes.
Oh no, it was totally fun. And we also did an original one that's not based on a novel, and we did it during the pandemic. And that was a lot of fun because what we did was we got a couple different people within our building who are actors and recorded them, you know, basically like we did all kinds of COVID safety stuff. We hung up like plastic sheeting and we had thermometers and sanitizer, and we got people to come in. There was an actor in my building, Jenny Malcolm, who also runs an amazing art group called Be an Arts Hero. And she was in a pod with some other actors. And so we managed to record a whole bunch of actors in her, well, not a whole bunch, like three, in her apartment. But like we had cables running throughout the building so that we could record it. And like just to make art during a time when everybody was stuck inside was so exciting. Like I have to say, like if you put your mind to it, you can do a lot with very little. And oftentimes people can't tell really like whether something was a big production or whether it was just, you know, a labor of love.
What is the podcast called?
Oh, so that one is called The Bite. And they're on iTunes and Spotify and Apple.
How are you still doing Medium Cool?
Yes. So Medium Cool started as a film blog. And that's why I say I feel like I'm turning into the other character, Zoe, the one who's a little obnoxious about having more Mia time, because she does film stuff. And Yeah, so Medium Cool started as a film blog, and then we kind of expanded it into more of a magazine. Now we have a relationship columnist, Dear Polly Hannah, and we have a column where we publish essays on writing and about books as books are getting published, and that's called Draft One. And we just put a new essay up today, a writer from 713 Books, and it's on the Chinese Cultural Revolution, but also about writing their novel set during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. And so it's kind of like a pop culture hodgepodge of stuff, and it's mediumcool.com.
Now, dear Polly Hannah, there's someone on this call whose first name is Hannah. Is that the same person, or am I breaking the fourth wall here?
Yeah, it might be.
So, maybe after we're done with Emily, we can just open up relationship questions to Polly Hannah live. And
That would be great.
so I want to finish up. There's a question that Robert's asking, and might have to do with your reading. I don't know what it has to do with, actually, because I didn't make the connection. When is Friends with Benefits right?
Oh, that's a fair question.
Okay.
When is Friends with Benefits right? So, I mean, I have to say, actually, maybe we should put that to Pollyanna. But in this book, a lot of the characters have slept with each other or they've had like little romantic moments. And that was something else that I kind of wanted to get at is that sort of messy period, especially in your 20s, where everybody has a crush on everybody else and they may or may not be sleeping with each other and there are all these romantic tensions. So when is Friends with Benefits right? I think as long as both people agree, then it's right.
Yeah. Depends on the benefit too. Like my Friends with Benefits situation is like they have a comfortable sofa. Like that's a huge benefit.
Oh, I get you. Your benefits are
Exactly.
not necessarily sexual. They're like, can you give me a place to sleep if I need it?
Yes. Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining us and reading and answering all the questions. That was awesome. You were awesome. And check out the books. Check out the books, the last two, Brooklyn Kills Me and Sleeping with Friends. And they are available where all fine books are available. But please support your local small bookshops and bookshop.org if you can.
Yes.
And just and don't forget to visit emilyschultz.com. You can read about her, and there are the books, Little Threats, The Blondes, Friends and Enemies, and there's the podcast. Everything that we talked about is right there. It's kind of one stop visiting with Emily Schultz. So again, thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And for folks that are watching this on the stream, you're always invited in for the open mic. Just use the Zoom link, and hopefully, I will let you in, but hopefully we'll see you soon. Thanks again, Emily.
Thank you.